Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Kizzy and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be doing my February wrap up, which I'm filming extremely late as it is the middle of March now, but better late than never. So my flatmate is playing some music, so I'm hoping you can't hear that, but if you can, we'll just have some nice background music to go along with the video. I've wanted to do this every single time that I've done a wrap up, or the one other time that I've done a wrap up, but to be honest I completely forgot to do it in my last video, and it's something that I've seen on Becca's Books do. I'll link her channel down below if you'd like to check her out because she's one of my favourite booktubers. But every wrap up she does a stats bit at the start, and it's something that I quite like to keep a track of anyway, so I thought I'd just put it in my videos just because it's kind of good for me to look back on and reminisce, I suppose, about the little stats thing. So I will put up the side as I'm talking through them what they are. But first of all, I have the total amount of pages read over the course of the month, and that was 1,880, which averaged out to about 65 pages per day, which for me is actually quite high. I normally on average read about 50. However, I have been trying to work to up that a lot, and there were some very poor days where I only read like 2 or 3 pages or like 0 pages. And I had 2 really good days where I read over 200 pages, which definitely helped bring that up. So I'm hoping to be more consistent over March. It's not going too well, I'm not gonna lie, but we can turn it around. So I'm hoping to increase that even more over the next course of the month. Another target that I had for this year was to read every single day. I've yet to reach that in a month so far this year, so I do need to work on that target. But I did manage to read 27 out of 29 days, which isn't too bad. 2 days where I didn't read is not too bad at all, which is, it's a greater improvement onto last year, so I'm still looking at it as a plus. So for the ratings I had this month, I've had no 1 star or 2 stars. I've had 4 3 stars and 1 4 star and 1 5 star, and I'll talk about why that is in a moment. But moving on to the next or the final bits of the stats, I have the genres that I've read. So I've read 1 uni read, which was a drama, then I've had 1 contemporary, 2 young adult fantasies and 2 adult fantasies. So moving on finally to the mediums I've used to read these books, and I had 1 audiobook, 1 ebook and 4 physical books that I've had from my shelf. Moving on to the reviews. So the first book that I finished this month was one that I had to read for uni, and that is A Bold Stroke for a Wife, which is a drama from the 18th century. So this follows a man who has fallen in love with this woman, and she is currently under the custody of 4 different men that her father kind of put her in charge of, or put her under their charge of when he died. So they all have to work together to agree on whoever suitor pursues her, and he's done this purposely so that she basically can't ever get married, because each of the 4 men are completely different. One's a Quaker, one's very kind of flamboyant and promiscuous, the other is very kind of strict, and etc, etc. So they're all very different personalities that are never going to agree basically on one single suitor. So this man who has fallen in love with her decides that he will dress up and play these 4 different characters to suit each of the person, to get them all to agree to let him marry her and kind of trick them basically into marrying her. So I gave this 3 stars mainly because it is quite funny and I didn't dislike it. It's quite a short, easy read, but I just don't think it translated very well into kind of modern culture. If I wasn't learning about it in uni, I wouldn't find it that interesting to read about, so it was a 3 star for me. But it wasn't that interesting, so I wouldn't read it. But maybe you like 18th century drama and that's a book that you want to read. So the next book I read is the second in the series, and that is A Girls of Shadow and Storm. This book here. So I read the first book in this series at the end of last year, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping for. I did think it was slightly overhyped. However, I did think I would just continue with the series anyway, just for the sake of it. And I'm kind of regretting that I did, because I still didn't like this at all. I found the dialogue with the romance very cringy, very unbelievable, and it just didn't make that romance believable for me, which I think is a real shame. It is a female-female romance, so it's been very much hyped for that, which rightly so it should be, because it's good to encourage diversity within books, because there's probably not enough out there at the moment. But I just didn't believe it as a romance because of the dialogue. I just found it a bit cringy, and I'm someone that has to have, like, I don't know, I just found it cringy. I don't know if anyone else has found that or not, but I just struggled to believe it. And sadly, the bits where their romance was most interesting was where it was kind of going a bit rocky and a bit wrong. That kind of brought a bit more of a like grit to the romance, if that makes sense. Like, it just wasn't quite as flat as it had been. Apart from that, I also found it a bit repetitive. The main character has a bit of post-traumatic stress, I suppose, from the events that happened at the last book, if you haven't read that. Oh, I haven't done a synopsis. Wait, I'll do a synopsis and then I'll come back to that. So if you haven't read the first book, I'll do a generalisation of that one. So this follows a society that are split up into 3 castes. The first caste are the full animal caste or moon caste, so they are people, I'm assuming they kind of represent the physical human form, but they are completely animalistic, so they all have fur on them, or they have like claws or talons if they're a bird animal, or a bull, they look completely like a bull basically. Then there is the second caste, which is the steel caste, and then they have animalistic characteristics, so they might have animal ears or animal fur, like slightly, but they are mainly human. And then there's the paper caste, which are completely human. So the hierarchy goes moon caste at the top and then paper caste at the bottom. And at the moment the society is run by this bull family. He is like a bull king. Each year several girls from the paper caste who are deemed beautiful are picked from society, and they are taken to his palace to become his concubines and kind of just serve him sexually for whenever he wants it. So this is a YA novel on Goodreads, it says, but the topic is a bit risky and there's definitely rape-like scenes in it and violence in it, so I'm not sure if I would deem it as YA appropriate. Goodreads has said it's YA, so in my stats I included it as a YA, but each their own. That's the general gist of the story, and obviously it's about her kind of rising against that, as kind of it would typically go. And then this obviously follows on from the events of the last book. But yes, so she has some repetitive kind of memories that kind of flashback from the events of the last book. But for me, I found that that was the only thing that she seemed to have. Part of her personality and development was just these continuous flashbacks or mentions of the king. And like, okay, I'm sounding really cruel because like obviously that is really impactful, but it would be mentioned like 4 or 5 times across the page, or like, and then repeated twice again on the next page. It was just very continuous, very repetitive, and there didn't seem to be anything else to it. I could just be missing things or just being caught up in that because I picked up on it and it started to annoy me. The more and more it was mentioned and not really developed upon, it was just the same thing being repeated. I just thought it could have been pushed a little bit more, developed more, and then it would have been fine, but it wasn't. It was just the same thing again and again. So I wasn't the biggest fan of this, so I gave it 3 stars, a low 3 stars, and I might continue with the series if I can get it in the library. I don't think I'll buy the next book at all. Yeah, not the biggest fan, but I know it's a lot of people's favourites, so don't let my review put you off at all. If it sounds like something you'd enjoy, definitely go for it. So the next book I finished, I won't be doing that much of a review of it because I did do an entire video of me reading it because it was my first time reading Cassandra Clare. So I have actually since then decreased my rating of it as I've thought about it more, and I did originally give it 4 stars, but I'm going to change that to 3 stars now, just because I originally rated it as how I would have thought I would have rated it if I read it when I was younger, but that doesn't really make sense because I'm not and I'm reading it now. So I have given it a 3 stars. It is a good book, it is interesting, it was a higher 3 stars than I would say Girls of Saturn and Storm was. Things I liked about this book was the kind of comradeship and the banter between the friends. However, that was kind of overshadowed by my dislike of the characters. I thought Clary was an okay main character. I did find she was disloyal quite a lot to her friends that were before the book, and it just didn't really make sense to me. I didn't really like the main romance person. I thought he was quite mean, and I didn't think that should be promoted in the way that it was. He should definitely have had to have gone through something that kind of changed his personality to then become more attractive in that sense, whereas I think it kind of encouraged a negative, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I explain it more in my vlog, I promise you. But yes, I did enjoy the world and I did enjoy the plot. I thought it was quite interesting and just a new way to do it, and I can see how there are so many books within this world, and I do want to continue it. I haven't picked up another book yet, but I do plan on doing it, so I will continue it at some point. So the next book I picked up was Angel Mad by Gareth Nix. This wasn't on my February TBR. My February TBR by the end of the month kind of just went downhill completely, but I just fancied picking it up, so I did, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. There were a few things I didn't like about it, which was mainly the ending. As I was reading this, I felt like it was going to be a series, just the way the plot was going, and it turns out it's not. I think it's just a standalone, so the ending felt a little bit flat for me, but I did really enjoy the characters within it. For those that don't know, this follows a world where the magic system revolves around icons, which are these things in the front cover. that people paint, and then they use them to call angels to them, and the angels do their bidding, if that makes sense. So the stronger you are, the more powerful the angel you can kind of pull to you, and that also sacrifices your life. So the more magic you use, the quicker you age, basically. So each angel has a specialty as well. For example, one might be good at finding people, another might be good at, I don't know, making your toast. I don't know, that's just an example. It's a very bad one, but we're gonna go for it. So this follows 4 characters that are somehow all interconnected to the main villain in this book, who you also get a point of view from, so she is a 5th perspective in it. I preferred the characters, the 4 main characters' point of views, than her point of view, just because they kind of come together and have quite a good friendship between them all, which is something I really enjoy to read within books. But it was okay. It was fine to read her parts too. Like, it was quite interesting to see the villain point of view in that, done that way. But she's basically been dead for 100 or so years, I can't remember exactly. And the reason she died is because she kind of betrayed her people. One of these angels with her destroyed this entire country, and out of that, all the people that are from this country either become monsters or die if they now use magic. So over the 100 years, they've kind of become the bottom class that you can be, because they can't use magic and they can't be healed, etc. like that. So they're now the bottom class. However, she's now risen and is trying to continue her plan, and the other 4 characters are to do with that. That description seemed to be all over the place, so I have no idea if that made sense. If it didn't, check out Goodreads, because they'll probably have a better description. But yes, I enjoyed the magic system, very unique. I enjoyed the characters in this, and I generally just enjoyed the plot quite a lot. So the only thing I would change is the ending, just because it was a bit anticlimactic, and the fact that I would make this more than one book in a series. I would love to know more about these characters, especially potentially backstory from them. So if there was even like a short story collection done that followed them before this happened or after this happened, I'd be happy. So the 4th and final physical book that I read is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. If you've seen any of my recent weekly reading vlogs for last month, you'll know I absolutely loved this. I gave this 5 stars, absolutely deserved it in my eyes. I have seen on Instagram recently that some people are struggling to get into it, which I can understand because it does have quite a slow plot, especially at the beginning, but that didn't bother me. I still loved it from the first moment I picked it up. So I think Brandon Sanderson's writing is phenomenal in this. It's just really good. It's super easy to read and really accessible as a fantasy, and definitely one I would recommend if you're looking to get into fantasy, or if you're a fantasy lover anyway. I still think you would enjoy this because Brandon Sanderson is amazing. So I think this would be really good for people that haven't read fantasy before or trying to get into it and don't know where to start, because it has the main themes of fantasy. So it has elements of war and elements of kind of disease and almost apocalyptic kind of ideas, not exactly, but along those lines, and it has quite a lot of politics in it, but not so much that you don't understand what's going on, or so much going on that it kind of overwhelms you. So all the elements of main fantasy is in there, but they're just done in such a unique way that kind of tones them down and makes it so much more accessible and easy to get into. I also really enjoyed the characters in this. I thought they were done really well and I enjoyed reading them. So if you don't know, this follows a society where they used to be run by these people called the Elantrians, who were these kind of godlike creatures and lived in the city of Elantris. And the way that you became these Elantrians was just one day you woke up and you just became these beautiful godlike creatures, and this could happen to anyone from the lowest of class to the highest of class. However, 10 years before the start of this book, that changed, and the people who began turning into Elantrians and the Elantrians themselves turned into instead these kind of grey, disgusting creatures that were like lost all their hair, had like dead skin and like grey patches or black patches on their face, and were generally just quite gross. And the whole of Elantris therefore kind of, they lost their power basically, they lost all the magic that they had, and as a repercussion of that the people revolted and the merchants became the power enforcers of the country. So the now king was a merchant at the time. So the society now is based on a structure of money, so the more money you earn the more likely you are to get a title like lord, etc. And then if your money is to decrease for any reason, then you are going to be stripped of that title. So as you can tell, it's very precarious and very dodgy system that is not working. So this follows 3 main characters. The first is this son of the king of this system, and it starts straight off when he wakes up and he discovers he's turned into one of these Elantrians and is banished to the city of Elantris. So then he works to make this a nicer place to live, because when he gets there it's very decrepit, gross, the people are kind of rabid, and it's not generally a nice place to live, and people tend to go mad in there quite quickly, because another repercussion of being one of these Elantrians is that they can't die, and they're kind of frozen in the time that they are. So if they get injured, they don't lose or heal from that injury. So even if they just bump their arm, they constantly have to live with that pain, and over time those things build up and they end up losing their mind. So he kind of works to make this a nicer place to live and a society that actually people would want to be a part of. The second perspective follows a girl from a neighbouring country who is a princess and was actually betrothed to Raoden, who is the first perspective. However, by the time she gets over to the country and arrives, Raoden has died, and as a consequence she is now his husband, as it was in their marriage contract that if he was to die before, she would still become her husband. His husband. That means she is now the princess of the country and decides that actually she wants to do good by it, and because she can see that the politics is all kind of corrupt and not working, she then works to make that a better system and a better place to live for women as well, because she's quite a powerful woman, and at the moment women are quite pushed down and not very well appreciated in that system. The third perspective follows a priest who is from this religion that is very imperialistic and is trying to kind of take over the country. So the second perspective also works against him as well. And his perspective I didn't like as much as the other two. However, his pages were quite short, so it was not at all a negative point for me, really. Like, it wasn't a push to get through them, because they were only short and easy to get through, really. They just weren't as enjoyable because he was just a bit more drab, a bit more flat. I also quite like the romance in it. It's just a hint of a romance, so if you like romance and fantasy, I think you will like it. If you don't like romance and fantasy, I don't think it will greatly affect your reading of it, because it is just a small kind of twinkling in there, and it only really becomes a bigger part at the end of the book as things are getting wrapped up. It's not really through the majority of it. But yes, absolutely love this book, would highly recommend it. I'm reading it for the Cosmere Along, so if you would like to join in on that, it's on Rachel Marie's channel, so I'll link the video that explains it all in there if you would like to join along. But I'm enjoying it so far. I mean, I've only read one book for the read along, but I'm hoping it will only improve. So for the final book that I read this month, it was an audiobook, and that was To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. And I gave this 3 stars just because I'm gonna have to say something that I don't like to say very often, and that is that it wasn't as good as the film. The film for me is such an easy film to watch, and it's a real comfort thing that I just want to kind of put on if I want a little bit of a cheer up or a bit of like a comfort thing. However, the book I think just wasn't as good. I didn't like Peter, the main protagonist, as much as I did in the film. I actually thought he wasn't that pleasant, and I don't really understand why they fell in love, because they just don't seem to fit or get on, or I don't know. I just didn't think it was believable. Maybe I need very believable romances, I think. But yeah, it just wasn't as good as the film, so I can't recommend it. I would just watch the film, which I know is really bad and something I rarely say, but I didn't enjoy it as much. I have continued with this series listening to it on audiobook just because it is quite easy to read or listen to on audiobook. It's not heavy like fantasy where you have to focus on it, which I'm not really good with audiobooks anyway. They're always just kind of on in the background for me, so that's why I don't really read contemporaries normally anyway. That's the only reason I would read a contemporaries through audiobook at the moment. They're just quite nice to put on. So yeah, 3 stars for that one. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I think it's been quite long, so I'm going to try and round it up now. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up because it's always helpful. And if you like the books that I talk about and the books that we discuss, please subscribe to my channel. It would be, again, greatly appreciated. And apart from that, I shall see you in the next video.